announcing that investigators of the Multi-Agency Strike Team, or MAST, have arrested 3 alleged members of a criminal syndicate. We will allege these 3 men used their positions working inside Sydney ports to facilitate an importation of 506 kilograms of cocaine. These drugs were located within a false wall at the rear of a shipping container and wrapped in lead sheeting. We will allege this was part of the offender's plan to evade detection by law enforcement. The investigation into this criminal group began in April 2025 with the establishment of Strikeforce Pay Porter. MAST investigators received intelligence that a group was planning to remove illicit drugs imported in a shipping container whilst it was stored at sea freight facilities in New South Wales. In the early hours of Sunday morning, a 38-year-old Hillsdale man was observed by police moving shipping containers around the facilities in order to access a specific shipping container. A short time later, police observed another man with a bag enter that shipping container. Our investigators entered the facility and arrested the man, a 25-year-old from Oyster Bay, as he exited the shipping container. When inspecting the container, police located a crowbar, angle grinder, lighting equipment, ear protection and other hand tools. We will be alleging the man was using these items to cut into the rear wall at the back of the shipping container. Specialist crime scenes attended the facility in the early hours of Sunday morning and removed 506 individually wrapped blocks of cocaine, which was concealed behind lead sheeting. The shipment has an estimated street value of $164 million. At the street level, this equates to 2,530,000 individual street deals. Now it is worth nothing as police have seized it and it will be destroyed. The Hillsdale man who initially removed the container was also arrested at the freight facility. Both men were transported to St George Police Station and were charged with the importation of border-controlled drugs. The pair were also charged with attempting to possess a commercial quantity of border-controlled drugs. Both offences carry a penalty of life imprisonment. A short time later, investigators executed a search warrant at the Hillsdale man's home, where a third individual, a 42-year-old from Caringbah, was intercepted as he left the property. Investigators spoke to the man and he was in possession of $200,000 in cash, suspected to be proceeds of crime. He was charged with dealing with money believed to be proceeds of crime. Further inquiries established that Caringbah man also worked at a logistics company as a forklift driver. A second search warrant was executed at the home of the Oyster Bay man, where a further $130,000 in suspected proceeds of crime was located and seized. All 3 men were refused bail and appeared before Southern Local Court yesterday. 2 of the men remanded in custody and the Caringbah man was released on strict bail. Before I hand over to Superintendent Watson, I'd like to take this opportunity to remind the community that every time someone buys illicit drugs in Australia, they are funding serious crime networks responsible for violence here and around the world. That is why the AFP, New South Wales Police and our partners at the MAST put so much effort into disrupting trusted insiders so we can close the door on the illicit drug trade and ensure that organised crime networks cannot profit at the expense of the community. I'll now hand over to Superintendent Watson.
Thanks, Commander. Good morning, everyone. John Watson's my name, the Commander of the Drug and Firearms Squad State Crime Command, also the co-commander of what is known as the MAST. As you've already heard today, Operation Pay Porter commenced around April this year. And in just 4 short months, corrupt insiders were identified. That investigation focused on people working inside Sydney ports, facilitating the arrival of border-controlled substances, in particular, in this case, cocaine. The investigation was indeed complex, and on Sunday the 31st of August we found ourselves in the freight forwarding facility in Sydney, where, as you've just heard, 1 man moving containers acting outside his role, entered a container. The second man came in with bags. Both those men were arrested within the precinct. What we now know is that they were there for the sole purpose of retrieving narcotics. Two men were arrested, search warrants unfolded, large amounts of cash seized, in excess of $330,000. At the time of the arrest, tools designed specifically for the purposes of retrieving those drugs were also located. 506 kilos of cocaine is indeed significant. It tells us that the investigation was on point. It tells us that they were well placed and well organised to continue their activities. There is no question in our minds that transnational criminals overseas are looking for pathways into our communities. Those arrested were well organised. Items seized at the search warrants were able to be linked to the investigation and their corrupt activities. When you think about the port facility is probably one of the most heavily regulated areas, and people there have to have particular clearances. One would expect that that they would go about their business, doing their jobs, doing what they're paid for, not unloading hundreds of kilos during that time. It is indeed an indication that the mast is making a true dent in the transnational transportation of drugs in this particular country, and indeed in New South Wales. Happy to take questions.
Superintendent, does your intelligence at this point suggest that these criminal groups are targeting employees who already work at the ports, or are people who are part of that criminal organisation slowly making their way into roles there?
So it is across all of those mediums. There is no question in our minds that transnational criminals are targeting those that are well placed in the transport and logistics area to use their positions corruptly and to enable drugs to come into this country. The sole purpose of the mast is to combat that, and what we've seen here today is a successful operation. In just 4 short months, 3 criminals and huge amounts of drugs have been seized.
You were saying a little bit earlier that the container itself contains sort of legitimate items with the false wall at the back. Have you looked into the provider of that particular container that came from Europe? Is that part of the investigation?
So of course the operation is ongoing, and this method of concealment is not unusual. What is unusual about this case is the ability for the people inside operating, using their employment as a guise to go about criminal activities and unpack drugs.
But will you be seeking to speak to the provider of that original shipment from Europe to Australia? Do you think they might have any sort of role in the investigation?
Look, the investigation is far from over, and there are very active lines of inquiry, and that certainly will be one of them.
And how senior do you think these 3 men who have been arrested are in that sort of broader syndicate, the chain of command?
Look, we're not alleging that they are organising, but we will be alleging they are well entrenched. They have full knowledge of what's going on, and they are a critical component to their overall operation. We have disrupted this syndicate completely.
Are any of them known to police?
The investigation proactively targeted people that had become known to us.
Were they all part of the same company, all 3 men?
So in this particular case, 2 men were part of one company and a third was part of another, also logistic company.
And have the companies and their hierarchies, have they been contacted to unearth more info about possible other suspects?
Look, as part of MAST and what Australian Federal Police and government agencies are doing, we are working with industry right across the broad spectrum. So that and much more proactive activities are being undertaken.
I how broad do you think this issue could be? If you found 3 port workers, do you think there are more?
Experience tells us that Mars have been here for 9 months, and in that short 9 months time frame, we have unearthed corrupt insiders across a range of mediums, and this was just another example of how they use their roles to bring drugs into this country.
Do you have any idea where the drugs came from originally?
Again, that's a line of inquiry that we will be actively exploring.
Is there a vetting process for people who, I guess, work with those types of companies?
Yes, so anyone who works on the wharf does require to go through a vetting process as part of their employment.
You said that these 3 worked for 2 different logistics companies. Those logistics companies, are they isolated to working specifically around Port Botany, or do they also work up near Newcastle and with the other ports at Port Kembla?
They're global companies, so they've got offices around the world.
With the containers, can you specify when one of the men, I think the Oyster Bay man, when he walked out, had he already started working on this false wall and then you ambushed him there? Or can you give us maybe a bit more details on how the operation went down?
Sure, yeah. So we'll be alleging that he went inside that container for the purpose of retrieving the drugs, that those tools that he took inside the container he was using in order to access the false wall at the rear of the container, and he had started to do that at the time police intercepted him.
How long have police been lying in wait before the sting?
Oh, look, as Superintendent Watson said, it's a 4-month investigation, so we've been looking at this group for some time.
Do you believe there are still senior members of this syndicate here in Australia that you're, I guess, currently watching? Is there anything that you'd like to say to them?
Look, we're not ruling out further arrests at this point in time. We will look to target any corrupt insiders that are working with organised crime to facilitate the importation of drugs or other illicit commodities.
Is there any intelligence at this stage to suggest there are still senior members of that syndicate here in Australia, or are they overseas?
We've got a number of lines of active inquiries that are continuing in relation to the moment. So the matter's before the court, so it's probably not appropriate to sort of go into too much detail.
Any particular drug syndicates in your sights?
Oh, look, at this point in time, we wouldn't be prepared to go into that sort of detail.
You guys all good?
Thank you.
Very
Thank
much.
you.